thousands of piano manufacturers and millions of pianos sold. Ted,
where'd they all go?
What's the story? Today we discuss.
Hi, Ted Barcelou with Alamo Music Center here in beautiful downtown San Antonio, Texas.
And I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please check out our other YouTube channels or other videos. Sign up for notifications, leave us comments, like our videos. We really appreciate your support, and we love making you guys good content. Well, Ted, this is a fun one today, and I brought Pierce's Piano Atlas, which looks like a really just long book, but really it's just a list of piano manufacturers.
It's almost like an index. It reads like an index of a
book. Yeah, it's like you flip through this book, and it's just name after name after name. And then on a lot of them, they'll have serial number, date range. So this is, people don't like to talk about it, but this is almost the source of finding piano information. And what does it say about the piano industry? That it's in a book form, and it's a list of names and serial numbers.
Well, in the last video, we talked about how at Baldwin at one point in the 60s, they made their millionth piano. So there's actually a record number of all those serial numbers for every unit that they manufactured, as well as all of the other thousands of manufacturers that build hundreds, if not thousands of pianos.
And it's almost built on myth. It's like these are because someone said my piano was from 1970. I bought this one in 76. And so it's the official text, but we know there's inconsistencies in it. It does a great job. Shout out to Pierce Piano Atlas. But the story behind why we're bringing this whole video to everybody is because we get this call every single day. I have a Klein piano, it was passed down from my family. Is it worth anything? It's almost like the story of the Stradivarius violin, and they think they're going to stumble upon gold or a highly sought after piano that was built like a Steinway or built by, and there's magic behind music, so you want there to be a great story behind this. So I'm sure there's great stories to every single name in this book.
Sure there is.
But why are there so many names?
It's because of how the business started off. When the piano manufacturing business first got organized just in the United States, in this country, it was the production of soundboards, cast iron frames, wire for the strings, the string wire, and then the hammers and some of the action components.
The furniture too.
The furniture too. And a lot of them the bulk of the piano industry, believe it or not, was manufactured in the Midwest, Cincinnati and Chicago. And that's because Baldwin was in Cincinnati and Chicago was the most industrious city around there that had full access to railroads.
And it could go all directions. You go to New York, go to LA, go to Texas.
And so if you were out to get a piano delivered, say, to the state of California, 100 plus years ago, was a major hassle. You spent as much in transport as you did on the instrument itself. However, railroading the parts to places in the country, to where all the locals had to do was assemble these inside a described box. And so in carpentry, that's the first thing you learn is everything's built a box. You build a cabinet, it's a drawer. It's all boxes inside boxes and boxes.
Is it like IKEA?
It's kind of like that. So
kind of, not as
But they would have choices. You could use local lumbers to finish out and decorate the exterior of the piano, assuming that the back posts were built. And it wasn't until years later, and some of the British pianos didn't even have back posts. They just used the cast iron frame. And that was enough to support it. So there was a frame with a soundboard and no back post. So there's a lot of different manufacturing was based on keeping the cost down, keeping the material costs down so that the labor costs are down so that you can get the instrument delivered to a customer at an affordable price. And local manufacturing of the heavy parts, the big lumber that went into it, that's why you find those old, upright pianos from the saloon that had big, thick, heavy carved legs and the sides and all that. Those weren't actually, they did make pianos like that, but it was easier to get them carved up and made locally with the components. And so that's why there were so many different piano manufacturers or assemblers. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of places got their own names on the pianos. So a lot of department stores used to have their own brand of pianos. And
And
a lot of
music
those
stores
were
around
made-
the country,
sure did.
It was popular to say, hey, let's brand it this way, let's brand it that way.
So here's the history of the piano industry real fast. You have all these people that start making all these components. Then there's a list of manufacturers that make better components and better pianos. And then there's a guy that has an idea that doesn't have a piano manufacturing company, but he owns and buys 5 names. So now he's got 5 brands. So there's this great consolidation, and then there's a big drop in the market. And so you have a few, by the 50s and 60s and the 1900s and 1950s and 60s, you have a handful of piano manufacturers that own a lot of name brands.
Yeah, Aeolian is one of those.
Aeolian that had more of them than anyone else. They were like almost like United States American Piano Company. And Kimball owned a lot of them, and Baldwin owned a lot. Steinway always owned the same name.
Yeah.
Steinway didn't really go out and buy. They weren't in the business of piano business. They were just in the business of making pianos.
In a Steinway.
And it was Steinway.
They didn't want to diversify. Yeah, they were like, this is what we're making. This is a good product.
They didn't taint any name, and no name tainted them. They just stayed their own. And even through the electronics trend in the 60s and 70s, they did not go to any kind of electronic manufactured keyboard or even in the digital age.
It was tempting, I know.
It was tempting, but see, everyone else, as a result, went and sampled their pianos.
Yeah.
So their sound was the one that everyone wanted to get inside the digital age. And then that opened up to sampling of Bosendorfer.
It's funny you tell that story, and it's just interesting because it's like there was such a wide arrangement of places to get a piano, and you could go to the local town. You moved, you just left your piano behind. You went to the new town, you bought a different one.
Sure.
And the quality was pretty consistent because they were all manufactured, and you had a technician in your town, multiple technicians and tuners, and they could always fix the small stuff because it's very mechanical if you start following the process. And then, like you said, economy of scale happened, and people figured out ways to kind of consolidate, and then distribute. And so today we see a lot of these names still pop up. Are they the same? Is it the same story?
They're the same story. I mean, the roots are there. The ones that are different are going to be any of the imported pianos that are now, for the most part, made in China. And for the previous 30, 40 years, they may have been manufactured like in Korea or in Japan. But a lot of those names originally started someplace else. And a lot of the Aeolian names that they owned, Werlitzer being one of them. Werlitzer was a company that is born and raised in the United States. They started by importing instruments from Germany, was the #1 instrument retailer for almost 100 years. And they actually invented the spinet piano. So you could almost make, instead of a big upright, you could cut that soundboard in half and make 2 pianos. And everyone could get a spinet. At their peak in the 50s, during the I Love Lucy years, Werlitzer and Baldwin sold a lot of spinet pianos. And Werlitzer invented the spinet piano. Werlitzer bought all kind of instrument manufacturing, organ manufacturing, piano manufacturing, and then someone bought them. And then they were sold to a different company, and then now they're built in Korea.
Yeah, it's super fascinating because if you've looked at used pianos, you are probably feel like, hey, what's this? There's so many things to choose from, but in reality, especially on the modern piano, you'll see a lot of these names. You'll see Schumann, you'll see Kohler and Campbell, you'll see Weber, you'll see Werlitzer, you'll see all these names, but really they're only being manufactured by about 5 manufacturers now.
Of places, yeah.
And so it's very interesting to keep your eyes open for that. If you are looking at an older piano that has Werlitzer on it, and you were like, well, I want to get a newer looking Werlitzer, those pianos might be completely different, made on different sides of the world with the same name on it.
Yes.
And just couldn't be more different of a piano.
I grew up learning on a Werlitzer spinet.
And so it's just incredible. We see both sides of it. We see the old pianos coming in that are decent quality. You can tell that they're made here in America, and the carving's a little bit more intricate on it. And they sound okay. They're old. They need a lot of work. And then you see a new one come in, or a newer one come in, and you realize that, hey, this was made in China or Korea. And it's a decent sounding instrument, but it has that power of the brand name. And
Absolutely.
I think this is one of those cases where the industry understood kind of the value of branding. I mean, Steinway does it the best. But that's kind of why you see all these and why there's a book with 11,000 names in it. And And so it's just important to know what you're looking at, and not only that, but know the information behind it. A lot of the times you'll follow the history, and then it will drop off at some point, and there's no history past 1980, and then it's like, oh, and then in 2002 it reemerged because young Chang brought him back, or because, and Rittmuller is a perfect example. Rittmuller was started manufacturing again in like 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. But they were founded in 1880s.
Right. After 100 or something year hiatus, their name's back on the market.
And so you just have to be aware of this, because it can be very confusing. And I don't think there's a lot of industries that are like this. We were trying to think of comparisons, and there's not a very good comparison to, hey, there's so many names. And
the closest one I can think of that you mentioned to me is radio. The manufacturer of AM radios was huge at one time. Consolidated, got bought up, merged with manufacturer of AM/FM radios. And if you stop right there, all those manufacturers are gone. At one time, almost every electronics company in the 50s and 60s made transistor or AM/FM. They made radios, their own brands. And now, I think about the only radios you can go out and buy are going to be specially made ones for home stereos and whatever you get in a new car that you buy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was thinking of watchmakers and clocks. There used to be, every town would have a grand watchmaker guy, and he would make his own version and bring him components, and he wouldn't make the whole movement or anything, but he would go and he'd make it his own, do all the casing details and the finishing, and he could repair anything in the shop.
A lot of this standardization in manufacturing led to consolidation in business, just as a form of capitalism, and I would truly think a lot of that happened, believe it or not, with the railroad, because what the railroad did is it made 10 o'clock in the United States be the equivalent 10 o'clock all the way across the United States. And one of the first things that Hammond sold successfully were railway station clocks. So
was it the railroad or was it the clock?
It's the clocking of the railroad. The railroad demanded time have to be accurate. And so then the next thing to accomplish was time. And once that happened, you started timing employees at work. You started seeing productivity.
Everything became
standardized. Everything changed.
And so that is another topic for another
standard
video.
Of measurement.
But thank you guys for watching again. If you have any questions about a piano brand, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us online at alamomusic.com, where we have a chat agent available. If you want to leave any comments about cool piano brands that you've seen, there's a lot of interesting names out there, and we'd love to see that. Please leave us any comments if you need anything from us. This is Ted Barslew. I'm Patrick Marr with Alamo Music Center. Again, please sign up for notifications, subscribe to our channel here and to our other channels. We'd like to bring you guys great content and really appreciate all the support. Thanks for watching.